They're so alert. They've probably got so much sleep tonight. But I want everyone to be as alert as they can be because this is the last day.
Sorry, my mic. Yes, the last day that we are all going to be together. So without any further delay, let me introduce Jamal's sister. I'm sorry. I mean, I'm joking. Hanan, she's now in Dubai. She lived there for now 3 years. She's been working really hard in building a community. She started at 2, now there are 5. Everybody please welcome with us Hanan.
Woo! Hello, hello.
Yeah. Salam alaikum. Wow, look how many people are here. It's amazing. So the best thing about giving a morning speech, if you're nervous, is that not many people are here. But as you all, well, as most of you know, my job is actually, well, one of my jobs is being a public speaker. So by God's grace, it's not really a phase for me to be up here. But I have to say, with all the stages all around the world that I present at, with all the different people from royalty to dignitaries and whatever, this is the best stage to be here with my family in faith. Praise be to God. So I'm really honored by God's grace to be here. So as you can see, my speech is called Sleep and Rest. And Tamina, my daughter, was going to be given a speech this year, and it didn't quite work out. So I thought I'd include her in my PowerPoints. It's a bit of a surprise for her. I'm sure I'm going to get told off later on. But yes, so Sleep and Rest by me, featuring Tamina. So just to mention, this was actually a sermon that I wrote by God's grace probably about 4 or 5 years ago, and it was presented in the UK community. And then maybe about 2 months ago, I found it and then gave it as a sermon in Dubai with our small community. Actually, we had someone from Iran there, and she said to me, she was like, "Oh my gosh, that was such a great sermon. Can you send it to me? And then I'm going to translate it, and then we'll do it in Iran." So I thought, oh, this actually must be, good enough for the conference, God willing. So here it is for the third time, inshallah. So basically, sleep and rest. I love everything about neuroscience, and I watch a lot of TED Talks. And one of the TED Talks that I watched was by a guy called Matt Walker, who's a sleep scientist. And I thought I'd write this sermon in context with how sleep is mentioned in the Quran and rest by God's grace. And as we know, it's a blessing to be able to sleep. So just to clarify first, the dictionary definition of rest is to cease work or movement in order to relax, sleep, or to recover strength. So a lack of sleep is like a leaking pipe in our homes. It will leak into every nook, every cranny, affecting every part of our body. Quranically, the majority of time that sleep or rest is mentioned are in context with a blessing and mercy of the night, which is also clarified as a proof from our Lord. All right, let's inshallah hope this works. Yay. It's Tamina. So yeah, I had a thing about taking pictures of her sleeping, subhanAllah, so it was just perfect that I could use these. So as we see the first Quranic verse I've used, 78:9, we created sleeping so that you can rest. So why is sleeping important? We know that if we don't get enough sleep, that we can be ratty, we can be moody, we can be lethargic, lazy, clumsy, and we have a feeling of just being a bit brain dead. But let's understand some of the scientific effects a lack of sleep can have on our brain and our body that we may not even think about. So these are, of course, according to Matt Walker, who, again, the sleep scientist. So a lack of sleep affects the female and male reproductive health. So men sleeping 4 to 5 hours a night will have a level of testosterone of that of someone 10 years senior. So something to consider for the men who want to build muscle or maybe have babies. Our brain uses sleep as a save button to retain information learned during the day. But a lack of sleep prior to gaining the information or after means that our brain is not really absorbing the information in the first place. The brain has a part called the hippocampus, which is like the information inbox, if you want to think about it like your mailbox. Its job is to hold memory files learned. So a study of people with monitored sleep deprivation for one night, they weren't allowed to have any caffeine to stay awake, were given an MRI scan to show that the brain activity, which proved that 40% of information bounces off the hippocampus due to lack of sleep. So in a most recent study, the lack of sleep has been proven to actually erode the DNA genetic code. And then half of the immune system genes decreased and half of the genes associated with tumors, long-term chronic inflammation and stress, which equals to cardiovascular disease increases. But as we know, by God's grace, we have God's protection. So again, these are just scientific things that apparently sleep does. It's more Tamina. So as we see... As we see in the Quran, God, as I mentioned, gives us the blessing of sleep. So he is the one who rendered the night for your rest and rendered the day lighted. These are proofs for people who can hear. So again, going back to, if we think about if we had no sleep, like when you don't sleep well, or when you have things to do. And I was thinking about it in context with like being here at the conference and sleeping late, waking up early, not getting enough sleep, not being really present in the moment, because as we know, even without the scientific facts, I think we know within ourselves that if we've not slept, we're not quite there. So yeah, just something for me that I was thinking about in terms of, you know, even like yesterday, it was like, oh, let's go to DC. And I was like, yeah, let me go to DC with everyone. I was like, actually, no, let me not go to DC. And I think, do we think about that when we're coming to somewhere like here, like this blessing that we have of a conference? I think if we had worldly stuff to do, would we, you know, leave our sleep? Would we leave our rest to go and, you know, do extra activities and miss out on a blessing of being with the submitters and being in the room to enjoy the speeches that people have put together? So again, if I, you know, just thinking about myself coming here, I remember having a conversation actually with Tamina. So this ended up being quite a bit of a trip for us. So we did 5 days in Canada, by God's grace, 3 days here, and then 5 days we'll be in Iceland. And I said to Tamina, like when we were coming, is that just think that we're going to have 5 days holiday, and then we've got 3 days of being with the submitters, soul growth. So we want to spend every moment that we can, you know, taking in all the information that we can, learning, growing our soul. And then we've got another bit of a holiday at the end. So let's use the 3 days to really kind of be in the room and present. And yeah, it's just something that I think about when I look around the room and at different times of the day. Like, do we think like that? Like, why are we at the conference? Are we at the conference just to say, oh, I attended, but I'm going to sleep for half of the day, or going to be socializing and miss out? And I just think about all the people that have worked hard to put the speeches together, all the team that have come together to put everything in place for us. So just something like, if you had a work event for 3 days, and your boss was in the room, would you be there on time? Would you be walking in and out? So just to weigh up, like, how important it is to get the rest so we can be present and be with each other, which is the point of being at the conference, by God's grace. I've got more verses and more of Tamina. So again, it is a mercy from him that he created for you the night and the day in order to rest. During the night, then to seek his provisions during the day, that you may be appreciative. And also I wanted to move on because there's another verse, more Tamina. So God is the one who designed the night so you can rest in it, and the day lighted. God bestows many blessings upon the people, but most of you are not thankful. And here, more Tamina. Say, what if God made the daylight perpetual until the day of resurrection? Which God, other than God, can provide you with night for your rest? Do you not see? So as we see with all these verses, it's all talking about the blessing of having sleep, the blessing of having night, the blessing of having day. We know that some countries have perpetual daylight. Like now we're going to be going to Iceland. I was speaking to Gemma. I mean, even with the prayer times, like, by God's grace, we get a small window to be able to pray. But we know, again, also in this worldly life, that there is a lot of kind of suicides and things that happen, like where people's brains are not rested, and then bad things are happening because of the lack of sleep or the lack of nighttime that they get in these countries. Let me just find my notes on that. So yeah, so imagine if we only had daylight, like every day, there was no night. And the only way to sleep would be to hide yourself away. So do you think life would be as comfortable as it is now? So of course it wouldn't be. So this is how great God is to us. And do we take heed of this? Are we appreciative of having the night? Do we appreciate that sleep, that rest that God gives us? Scientifically, again, the shorter your sleep, the shorter your life is. So let's consider that sleep is like a life support system given to us by God to allow us to function better in our waking hours by fulfilling our commandments happily and righteously, not grumpy and lazily. And let's try to appreciate and show gratitude to God for this proof by sleeping better, whatever that means to you. Again, like for Fajr, when we have to wake up, you know, we shouldn't wake up lazily. So if we've not had enough sleep, you know, how are we waking up? And I know, like, over the years, I've heard a lot of people talk about that being, and I think there's a video from the Messenger as well, talking that's kind of something we can look at, how, whether we get up for Fajr, how we get up for Fajr. Are we getting up joyfully and happy and, you know, praise be to God, I get to pray, like wake up at this time and pray another day, or are we waking up like, oh, let me just get this done, you know, it's just something, emotion that to get out the way, you know, to get back to more sleeping. So let's, inshallah, be mindful of this. More Tamina, let's see, here we go. So again, more verses, inshallah. He is the one who designed the night to be a cover and for you to sleep and rest, and he made the day a resurrection. Another thing I wanted to mention about the night and day, like we have a lot of verses talking about people sleeping during the night and working during the day, but there are also verses about people working in the night, like getting provisions. So there's no law that says that if you work during the night, you're doing something wrong. So just to ensure that that's clarified, because I know that question has come up. But again, we put all the verses in context of each other, not just read one verse and, you know, oh, the sleep, like we're supposed to sleep at night. No, there is a verse that we looked at already which says about resting. Yeah, which I think is this one. So among his proofs is your sleeping during the night or day. So this is the verse I'm referring to. And you're working in pursuit of his provisions. In this, there are sufficient proofs for people who can hear. So again, just mentioning that you can have a nap during the day. I mean, we see some people napping here. So I mean, it's not wrong. And I believe, again, going back to science, and I studied childcare and the way kind of babies develop. They have a nap during the day, and as we grow older, we kind of go back to being that way. So I think people late 60s, 70s start to want to have that little nap during the day as well, to kind of recuperate and gain that, by God's grace, you know, more strength to get through the rest of the day. And that's just God's system, and there is a verse about that in terms of getting older in the Quran. And yes, so then I wanted to move on, move on to talk about rest as well. So although this sermon has focused on the sleeping aspect of resting, I do want to mention resting that God has blessed us with that doesn't necessarily come under the category of sleeping. So resting, another way that we can look at resting is when we rest upon transport, where we need to do little to get somewhere faster and further. So if we think about being on buses, trains, planes, bikes, cars, scooters, boats, and all modes of transports, you know, there'll be flying cars soon as well. But, you know, are we grateful for them? So Quranically, God mentions ships and livestock as a means of transport that we can rest on. And there I've got the verse where we have a dua that we can say when we ride these things. So, and he created for you ships and livestock to ride. As you rest on top of them, you shall appreciate such a blessing from your Lord and say, glory be to the one who subdued this for us. We could not have controlled them by ourselves. We ultimately return to our Lord. So the question is do you say this every time you get on a mode of transport? Are you appreciative? Like by God's grace, I think this was one of the first things that when I kind of came into submission that really kind of stuck with me. So every time I get in my car, every time I get on a plane, a thing that maybe a lot of you don't know, as much as I do fly around the world, I actually do have a bit of a fear of flying. May God help me. I go through phases. Sometimes I'm fine. Sometimes I move about. Like I'm a person that's very fidgety, especially on takeoff. Once we're kind of in the air, I'm fine. But yeah, I'm not like someone who loves flying. But yeah, I don't know why. I seem to be on a plane every 2 to 4 weeks. But yeah. But this is just something that I say, and I always kind of repeat it to myself. I always repeat Al-Fatiha, always remind myself God is in control. which is also, I think, for me personally, it's a blessing as well being on these planes, because generally when I'm on a plane, I am either reciting Quran or saying dhikr. Like, so I'm doing it more so than when I'm on the ground, I feel like. So, yeah, just a reminder as well to ensure that we are, saying that verse. And then, so praise God, in this day and age, we are blessed with so many forms of transport. And I personally believe that there is a benefit in saying that prayer, and it does say that you shall say that. So inshallah, we do use that, or just be thankful and grateful for the modes of transport that we can rest upon. So something to maybe help us remember when we ride on anything that is getting us anywhere further and faster, where we can rest on it. Let's try to vision the final place where we would like to rest on comfortable furnishings with our family in faith, God willing. And I was thinking when I was thinking about this verse yesterday, one of the sermons was, I think it was Ali. He was talking about the provisions that are given to us, and in hell there's no provisions, but we know in heaven we'll be given mansions, the definitions of what heaven is. And I think this verse is beautiful. They have deserved gardens of Eden wherein rivers flow. They will be adorned therein with bracelets of gold, and will wear clothes of green silk and velvet, and will rest on comfortable furnishings. What a wonderful reward, what a wonderful abode. So to think about that, when we get to heaven, by God's grace, God willing, that we all make it, that we don't have to work, we don't have to think about paying bills, we don't have to think about doing anything. All we'll do is rest on comfortable furnishings, God willing, and may God help us to all get there. That's my sermon. Thank you.
Mashallah, great speech, Hanan. Thank you so much. Any questions for Hanan?
No, thank you.
Can you hear me? I think this is... Hello?
Hello.
It's good now? Sorry.
Yeah, it's on.
Questions? Okay.
Yeah.
Let's test it with Jamal. Go on, Jamal.
My voice is loud. There we go.
See, it works.
Yeah, exactly. Mashallah, congratulations on the speech. And absolutely sleep and rest. They become valued. I think the older you get. I mean, I'm talking to some of the new dads, and they're like, yeah, sleep is something that has kind of, I don't remember it so well anymore, So we go through these phases. But what I wanted to, you made a point about Iceland. And obviously, I just came from there myself. And just on the reverse of this, about not having, you mentioned perpetual daylight during your speech. Well, in Iceland during the winter, they have pretty much perpetual night most of the time. And I was in a cab going somewhere and talking to the guy about it. And I said, listen, your country is beautiful in the summer. Very beautiful, so much to do, so much to see. I said, but what about the winters? And he said to me, well, I'm an Icelandic man, I've lived here all my life. And he goes, and one of the best kept secrets about Iceland is that we have the highest number of depression in Europe during the winter. He goes, the highest number of prescriptions for antidepressants is in Iceland, in the whole of Europe, especially during the winter. He goes, most people actually pack up and leave, and they go to like Tenerife, or they go to like south of Spain. They've got houses there. And I just thought, in relation to your speech, even if it was perpetual night, the gift of just resting, even if you could sleep forever, they can't even enjoy that, because even that doesn't balance out, and they just sink into a depression. So I thought it would be a nice little pointer to your speech, mashallah.
And it reminds me just a very quick anecdote about when I went to Norway, and went on a cruise and went as north as I could. And we basically were in perpetual nighttime. The sun didn't actually rise, which meant that we missed out on prayers. And even though I did try my best, like God knows my intention, like we were on a cruise and I asked the captain, can you get me a boat? I'll pay for it. Just get me down south where I can just like go on a Friday and then I'll come back to the next port and catch up with the boat. And then obviously at that time we had Kiara was in Oslo. She wasn't available for prayer, so it just didn't work out. But I've been through that, and it's something, again, to think about when you're traveling. Even on this occasion, when I looked at adding in Iceland, I did look to ensure that there were prayer times. So it was a lesson. It was a hard lesson learned. It was kind of a few years ago, so it was when I was kind of more serious about submission. And yeah, it was a good, for me, I see it as a good lesson, because now when I look at places to travel and things to do, it makes me more mindful that I'm prioritizing my prayers over where I'm going. So I'm looking at prayer times by God's grace before I'm actually even getting on a plane or booking tickets. Like, if I book that ticket, where can I do my prayers? How can I do my prayers? And kind of figuring everything out, which is the way that it should be in this worldly life. I think you had a question.
Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you for a very nice speech.
Is that, oh, thank you, that was it, thank you.
Yeah, I was thinking about the verse you put up, 43:13, where it says, as you rest on top of them. I got me thinking, you don't rest on top of a ship, you rest on top of a livestock. And then also it says, glory be to the one. Glory be to the one who subdued this for us. So again, if God did not subdue the animals, we could not rest on top of them. SubhanAllah. So my question is, how would you extend that to things that are, that does not need subduing, like a motor car? It's under your control anyways. Or a ship, you can take it each. But had, like you cannot rest on top of a lion because it's not subdued. Cannot rest on top of many animals that are not domesticated, or subdued by God. So that's my question. If you do, so do you think it just exclusively for livestock, because, two words on top of them and subdue?
Yeah, so thank you for your question, and it's a good question, and I did actually think about that, because in that same verse it says ships and livestock. So ships are motorized, as are cars, planes, etc. So I think that it covers all the aspects of things that we can rest upon. So livestock being the animals, the live things that God has subdued to us, and ships at that time, which we now have so much more, planes, cars, etc. And if we think about it in the context of anything electrical, things can happen with electrical things. I can tell you personally, I've had a car that's blown up on me, like the water pump's blown up. By God's grace, I was in a petrol station and was moving at like 2 miles an hour. But if I was on the highway and that had happened, then God knows, what the effects would be. So I do think that that prayer kind of covers electric vehicle, well, kind of anything that we can just rest upon, because as I said, it covers ships and livestock, which to me determines everything. A wild car, yeah, it was a wild car.
Mashallah, that was
you.
amazing.
Mashallah,
thank you
thank
so
you.
much, Hanan. I know none of us fell asleep after that speech, so mashallah, you did such a fantastic job. So I'm really excited, because I've tried to do a little bit of digging about this person, because I don't know her very well, but you're all going to hear her come up and give a very good speech. I've heard it from through the grapevine, that you're actually a big talker. You like to talk about a lot of things. So right now you're going to come up on stage, inshallah, and come and give us your speech. And you can talk about choosing the right company. So come on up, Dina. Everyone give her a round of applause. Dina.
Which button am I supposed to? Okay, thanks. Okay. Okay. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. This is my second conference and my first speech, and mashallah, I'm very excited. Very blessed to be here and to be able to give you guys a speech. And I wanted to talk about a subject of like part of the reason we're here, all the people that we don't get to see all the time, and like the people that we should be the people that we are the closest to. And so I'm starting with friendship. When we're young, most of our choices are made for us. We choose where we go to, who we're around, and it's all chosen by our parents. So it starts with the responsibility of, our submitter parents. They bring us about a community, inshallah. And we know that ultimately the choice isn't really ours. God chooses the people to put on our path to either bring us closer to him or further away from him. And inshallah, for all of us, it's that we get closer to him with the people that we have around us. So with this, we have all of the world of people that we interact with every day. And there are 3 categories of people. The believers, the disbelievers, and the hypocrites. So how from amongst these 3 groups can we decide how we interact and what people we choose to spend the majority of our time with? Start with the hypocrites, who are those who are fighting God, and they're our enemies. They fight his message, and from that we know that we should be far away from them. Do not befriend hypocrites. O you who believe, do not befriend outsiders who never cease to wish you harm. They even wish to see you suffer. Hatred flows out of their mouth, and what they hide in their chests is far worse. We thus clarify the revelations for you if you understand. So what's really important is that we understand and are able to recognize when someone is fighting us on religion and when they are at a point where they are people that we need to stay far away from. Okay, now wait. Yeah. He has instructed us in the scripture that if you hear God's revelations being mocked and ridiculed, you shall not sit with them unless they delve into another subject. Otherwise, you will be as guilty as they are. God will gather the hypocrites and the disbelievers together in hell. It's important that we can recognize that if somebody is fighting us with either their words or just sometimes it doesn't even have to be directly insulting you, but making it a situation uncomfortable in your belief, that we know that those are people who are closed off and that they will not be company that we should be keeping. It will make us as guilty as they are. Okay. I see the category of disbelievers a little bit more complicated because there is this, a concept of us having to woo them and set a best example because we could be able to, by God's leave, help push the message along for other people and inshallah create more believers. Okay, thanks, Eunice. Those who are disbelievers but don't fight us are potentials, and thus we have to treat them as potentials and be kind-hearted, and it's not wrong for us to be spending some time with them to set that best example. Not equal is the good response and the bad response. You shall resort to the nicest possible response. Thus, the one who used to be your enemy may become your best friend. So how can we recognize those disbelievers that are potentials versus those disbelievers whose minds are closed off. When you have a smaller community and you're not in like Masjid San Jose where you have so many people that you can be around every day, it is inevitable that you will come across people who are not on the path, but if they are willing to talk to you about God, or they have an open mind to seeing how you show your religion and how you go about your daily life and present this religion, then it's not like it's a situation where that person could potentially become a believer too, just from us setting the best example. I remember Bushra was talking about in one of her comments that so many people came up to her during her wedding last year saying that they have never seen any type of situation like what we have, mashallah, like our dedication and our love, what we show, it really is evident. And once you establish that, when you see disbelievers in your life, they even end up sometimes giving you reminders, and really it seems like they are very much in the message as well, even if they don't believe it themselves yet. So the tragic statement, my mind is made up. Some would say our minds are made up. Instead, it is a curse from God as a consequence of their disbelief that keeps them from believing, except for a few of them. So as I was saying, the problem here is when they make their minds up, they're closed off, and they can't. Those are when you know that these people are people that you don't invest so much time in. They say our minds are made up, our ears are deaf to your message, and a barrier separates us from you. Do what you want, and so will we. Spending our time with believers is a question of our priorities. We should be able to prioritize God as our number one, and in that we would be choosing people who are also choosing God as their number one every day. And that pushes us to strive to have more of that in our lives. Oh, wait. The believers never ally themselves with disbelievers instead of believers. Whoever does this is exiled from God. Exempted are those who are forced to do this to avoid persecution. God alerts you that you shall reverence him alone. To God is the ultimate destiny. We should never choose company of disbelievers over the believers. If there's an option for us to be with our community, that should always be our first choice. And if there's a reason why that isn't your first choice, you should really be reflecting and trying to figure out why it is that you don't want to strive to spend as much of your time with your believing family as possible. Spending more and more time away from the disbelievers and not prioritizing that will end up pushing you further off the path. And some verses that support that will say, 25:28, alas, woe to me, I wish I did not take that person as a friend. And 25:29, he has led me away from the message after it came down to me. Indeed, the devil lets down his human victims. And also 489, they wish that you believed as they wish that you disbelieved, as they disbelieved. Then you become equal. Do not consider them friends unless they mobilize along with you in the cause of God. If they turn against you, you shall fight them, and you may kill them when you encounter them in war. You shall not accept them as friends or allies. So on the opposite end of that, we have the believers. Those are the people that we should be spending the most of our time with, and that they are the ones that will, by God's leave, bring us closer to our religion, God, and have our quality of life just excel, by God's leave. So what happens when our priorities are our community? What does our life look like when we are choosing those who are like-minded and choosing God as their number one? God showers us with infinite love. It is evident in the way our dynamic is. We don't hold on to problems, and we don't let little things separate us. Whereas a lot of people who don't have this kind of bond holding them together, little things get between them, and then they have friends dropping out every year, people that they are estranged from, and we don't have that, mashallah. Surely those who believe and lead a righteous life, the most gracious will shower them with love. And they say, our Lord, let our spouses and children be a source of joy for us and keep us in the forefront of righteousness. Now that many new people have joined you, God has made it easier for you. He knows that you are not as strong as you used to be. Henceforth, 100 steadfast believers can defeat 200, and 1,000 of you can defeat 2,000 by God's leave. God is with those who steadfastly persevere. Another huge aspect of us spending time with believers is how easy, as God says in the verses, it is for us to make our daily lives around submission. It makes it so that for us, the path and our commandments are cheerful to do, simple, easy to access, all the things like understandings, Quran studies, praying in groups together. All of these things help us with our striving and firm our belief. And then finally, some photos of what life looks like when you spend your time with believers. Some of these are like the happiest memories that I've had from the past 2 years of being in submission. It's never a bad time. It's always happy. Everyone loves each other. And mashallah, we always talk about God, make God our priority. And yeah, these are from all the weddings, submitter trips, pumpkin patch, Bushra's wedding, Hanan, Wamid and Nusha's wedding, and then Shane's birthday, pumpkin patch, Tahoe again, 9. Yeah, mashallah, it's a good time. And the last things, the believers are members of one family. You shall keep the peace with your family and reverence God that you may attain mercy. So, to conclude, the believers, the people in this room, the people we don't see every day, they are our true family. And we should spend the most of our time being closest with our true family, learning the most about one another, and keeping this group as close-knit as possible. That's all. I finished so early.
Thank you so much. Great job, Dina. Is it good now? Great job, Dina. Thank you so much. Great reminders. By the way, beautiful pictures. You did an amazing job. Anybody has any questions for Dina? Once, going twice?
Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum.
Mashallah, Dina, that was so good. Really appreciate that. It shows you the mindset of the youth, which is awesome, So I know there's a lot of good things. I'm trying to get a picture of what your life was like before submission, because you've just been in it for a couple of years, right? Mm-hmm. And I remember when you first came into it, Noah and Shane were talking to you at the college, right? That's where they met you. So I'm trying to, what are some of the things that you can tell us about from before and after, and the big changes you've seen in your life?
Like I was saying before, like when you don't have a group of people who are prioritizing God, especially this part of keeping peace within your family, you just notice that a lot of people, they don't really have connections with other people to keep it. Do you know what I mean? They have connections with people just because these are the people that are around them in their lives. They let little things get in between. I used to change friends every couple years, maybe 1 year I'd have one group of friends, and the next year I'd have a different group of friends. And you just notice that these people, they don't have a peaceful mindset. They don't have an idea of community or anything that keeps people together for right reasons. They have like things that they end up becoming like depressed, lonely, and that's a lot of what I was around before. Just people who have like bad mindsets, and they just want to separate from everything, and it keeps them away from God especially. But yeah.
Assalamu alaikum, Dina. I'm right here. I'm going to ask you a question. Mashallah, I really loved your speech. It's very good and a very good reminder and good points, and praise God. My question to you is about people who like might not necessarily have the same kind of personalities. And what would you give the advice to somebody to like be close or get friends with somebody they would normally never be friends with, but they are submitters? You get what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like their personalities, maybe their interests are different. What would you say to that kind of person? What should they do?
Well, for one, we all have the common ground of being submitters, so we can always, that's always something that could be a topic of conversation. But of course, we also want to have like, you know, other types of connections with the people around us. And I would say maybe expand your interests. Like think about what you can find in somebody else's interests that interest you as well. Because like I feel like you can find a little bit of something you like in everything. And it just takes being able to explore that to be able to be friendly with everyone. I feel like that's what I do. I can talk to pretty much anyone, but yeah, just I guess in your mind, cater the conversation to what you like, and that way, if somebody's talking about something that typically you wouldn't be interested in, you can find something interesting about it, and then it's engaging for the both of you.
Is it? Yeah, okay. Assalamu alaikum, Dina. Good job, mashallah. So my question was going to be, like, if there was a issue that happened within our, you know, friend group or something like that, and Satan was trying to drive a wedge between us, how would you deal with that? How would you think we should deal with that?
Well, for one, not harboring anything. As we know, the idea is to keep the peace. So if there's an issue that you have with somebody, or just in general an issue, the first thing we all know is that we have to kill our egos and just address it head on. Maybe if you don't want too much drama and like having so many people get involved with something, pull the person aside, address it privately, and you just talk about like whatever that issue is and squash it before it can become something that you harbor. Because the longer you let it linger, the more that little things that maybe have nothing to do with the issue at all will start to bother you, and you just get this idea of the person that you just don't even want to associate anything with them anymore. And that's the opposite of what we're supposed to do. So I would say, yeah, you just talk to them about it. You know, keep the reminder in your head that the idea is to keep peace. So whatever issue you have, the first thing you should be thinking about is that you want to get over this issue, instead of, because I feel like a lot of people address problems as in like they want to feel better. And if both sides are just trying to feel better, it's more like you're trying to satisfy yourself instead of understanding what the issue is and trying to fix and get a solution, if that makes sense.
Actually, we have one more question, so Jamal, you can go ahead.
Yeah.
Well, mashallah, Shane actually already kind of asked it as well. So we know that what's profound about your speech is the last wedge for the devil, like Shane was raising, is between the believers. Like Satan didn't get to accomplish a lot with us. He didn't get us to stop us worshiping God alone and reading Quran, doing our prayers, congregating, all of that. So for me, your speech is profoundly important, and maintaining these bonds. What more advice would you have, maybe a bit more outside of your speech, about ways to build better bonds? Like in the UK, what we do is we've got like a once a month activity day where we go out, we do something fun together. It's inclusive, it's affordable, everybody can get involved, and that way we kind of keep those connections going. Is that something that you would consider is important as well, to kind of keep the closeness?
Yeah, I think that doing things outside of just being able to see each other at Masjid is important, because then, yeah, you get to know each other on a more personal level. Mashallah, I'm blessed to be in the big community with so many of the youth. I hang out with them all the time. I was like blessed also to get some help from Sarah, Asal, and Delilah. They let me live with them for a long time, and that brings you close to people. And then we also have, like, we do our picnic, which I haven't been able to attend yet, but I really want to. But that is something that brings people closer together. We do, for the youth, Shamram and Aaron, mashallah, they let us use their house for youth study every other Tuesday, and we usually attend a movie afterwards because it's half price movie ticket day. So that is something we always, like, we pick a lot of movies that, like, interest different people. Sometimes people don't want to go, but it's a good way to see what other people like. And yeah, a lot of dinners, fun things. Oh, during Ramadan, we do, like, the last 10 nights we eat all at the masjid. That's a really fun time to get to know people. Just things like that, activities that you can do with your community.
Thank you so much, Dina. A round of applause. Thank you.
Good.
All right, so our next speaker, I heard we have a golf champion in the house. And then the irony is his speech is on simulation theory. So everybody welcome Nathan, please. I think they're getting ready, so. I'll do it. We'll do it together. While Nathan is getting ready, we heard that we have a birthday in today for Farines. Farines. So is Farin in the house? We were going to do a Fatiha. Okay.
Farron, make yourself known. Come on, girl, don't be shy. Is she not here yet? Farron, yeah, everyone, Farron, it's her birthday. Give her a round of applause. Woo! So, how old are you today, Farron? 21 again? All right, 21. So, everyone, let's just give her a quick al-Fatiha, inshallah. So, you have a blessed year, and may God give you everything you want, you desire, and you need, and that's good for your soul, inshallah. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Maliki yawmiddin. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. Woo! To be in 21 again. All right, Nathan. There you go. Take it away.
Assalamu alaikum. All right. I'm going to talk about something that has sort of served as an interesting reminder to me about the world that we live in. And I'm actually curious before I start, I have to use this thing. How many people here have heard of simulation theory or the simulation hypothesis? All right, a few people. How many of you believe we're living in a simulation? Very good, all right. Well, so this is interesting, okay? So today I'm going to talk about my own hypothesis regarding the simulation hypothesis, and then we'll go a little bit into like how that reflects the world that we know we live in, what the purpose of it is, can we test that we're living in a simulation, and then we'll just draw some conclusions. So I'm going to make a little bit of a bold claim here. I think it's kind of interesting to think about. For those of you who don't know what the simulation hypothesis is, this might sound slightly bold, but I think you'll see as we go through it. I think the simulation hypothesis gives people who do not believe in a creator, do not believe in God, the means to believe in a creator or in God. So it leads them down that path. It may not be all the way, it may not be the right creator, but it leads them to believe in a creator. And I think ultimately that is, I call it a baby step, but it's, you know, for submission to prevail, more and more people will need to believe in a creator, and we'll see how that sort of plays out here. So what is the simulation argument? This fella here named Nick Bostrom first sort of theorized this in 2001. Essentially, it comes down to three different points. He sort of posited that one of these three things must be true. First, either almost all civilization that reach our level of technology development go extinct before becoming technologically mature. The second one is when some of those civilizations that do become technologically mature, they're not interested in creating simulations. So these first two are assuming that a simulation is created by a civilization, like a human being or like a creature of this world. The third one is the one I'm interested in, though. He said, if these two are not true, then we are almost certainly living in a simulation. And that's what's known as the simulation hypothesis. So what is the simulation hypothesis? It's basically saying that given, like, again, this is the definition by this philosopher, Nick Bostrom. With the achievements that we see with computers and artificial intelligence, future civilizations will be able to create highly realistic simulations, and he calls it an ancestor simulation, basically simulating what human beings or our creatures were in the past. It's kind of like, if anyone remembers like SimCity, it's sort of like you're creating a world in which these creatures move around and live their lives. In this simulation, it would be so realistic that you would not be able to tell whether you were in a simulation or not. So you would just think this is the real world. And the argument essentially goes that he also kind of extends this in saying, well, if we're living in a simulation, then statistically speaking, there may be a lot of simulations, and that we're living in one of them. So just wanted to lay the groundwork for that. And then it goes on to describe what the characteristics would have to be of the creatures or beings that are the ones who are simulating the world. And this is where it starts to get really different. He says there's super intelligent simulators with extreme computational power. And what he says is it doesn't necessarily imply the existence of a deity, but it doesn't imply the non-existence of one either, which is a really interesting thing for an atheist or a naturalist to say. And we'll dig into that a little bit. So hypothetically, in a simulation, there's a set of rules or laws for the simulation. And the simulators, the people who are creating the simulation, can create things, they can monitor you, they can intervene in the simulation. And he says it actually could parallel traditional religious conceptions. The simulators would also be able to reward or punish the simulated beings. So suddenly, this starts to sound an awful lot like the way that we know the world actually works. So for somebody, and it's not just this guy, Nick Bostrom, but there's a lot of folks who have started to kind of buy into the simulation theory. Their argument starts to sound unlike what they traditionally think of the world. They traditionally think of the world as everything was just random. There's no meaning to it, there's no purpose, everything just happened to happen. Now, all of a sudden, with the simulation theory, they go, well, actually, the universe was created. It was created with us in mind, and it was designed by they say, a transcendent power or some higher being. And in fact, this guy, Nick Bostrom, originally, in his original paper on the simulation theory, he said there's religious implications in this argument in that there's omnipotence and omniscience. He actually used these words. He referred to omnipotence and omniscience, and that it raises the probability of the existence of an afterlife. So again, the reason I'm even bringing this topic up, or why it came up in mind, I'm sort of interested in how folks who don't even believe in God can suddenly, you can see the intuition that we all have start to raise itself in ways that maybe they didn't even know that it would be possible. Okay, so how does the simulation theory, that's just a little tidbit on the simulation theory, how does this actually mirror the world that we live in today? The pale blue dot. So I'm not going to read all of the verses because I think this is kind of repeating the stuff we know, but I want to hit on some of the areas that kind of tell us that we live in an illusion. I kind of will use simulation and illusion as synonyms here. So in 57:20, I seek refuge in God from Satan the rejected. It talks about how this worldly life is no more than a temporary illusion. And in 29:64, it says this worldly life is no more than vanity and play, while the abode of the hereafter is the real life, if they only knew. And we know that our world is controlled by God. So in 10:61, it says that not even an atom's weight is out of your Lord's control, be it in the heavens or the earth, which again, if you go back to what the simulation argument or simulation hypothesis says, the simulators or whoever created this will be able to control everything. They'll be able to come in and out of it and just have full control, which is exactly what we know God says to us through the Quran. In 14:19, it says, if he wills, he can remove you and substitute new creatures in your place. So it just kind of goes to show God is in full control of everything. He can even just remove you and substitute a new creature in your place. And we know that God is doing everything. He said, in this case, I'm not going to read the whole verse, but it says, it's basically trying to say, had you planned, I'll read it first. Had you planned it this way, you could not have done it, but God was to carry out a predetermined matter. So it's saying no matter what you think you can do, what you think is possible, only God is going to make it possible for you when you have, even if you have the most detailed plan, it's not possible unless God makes it possible for you. Now, we know while this world is an illusion, there's things in this world that are created that can help you. So, for example, God created the sun and the moon as ways of calculating the time. And God says in 10:5, God did not create all this except for a specific purpose. So there's a purpose to this illusion. We know the ultimate purpose, and I'll get into it, is testing us to see if we'll side with God or not. But there's things within the illusion that, for example, he said in 8:44, he made them appear fewer in your eyes and made you appear fewer in their eyes. So this is talking about a war or going to fight. I mean, even when your things seem helpless, God can create or enhance the illusion to help you in whatever it is that you need help with. Now, I think a lot of the time in the Quran, God mentions how this illusion actually hurts us. So in 57:14, it says, you were diverted from God by illusions. And we know things like money, your family, I don't know, your other people, idols obviously, can divert you from God, and they're an illusion. So, but a lot of people, like the majority of people in the world, are diverted from God by the illusion of this world. So what can you do about it? In this world, we're given the ability to earn credit, to redeem ourselves and grow our soul. So in 8:17, God says, he thus gives the believers a chance to earn a lot of credit. And I mean, if you sort of tie this back to the simulation argument and how it parallels it, our universe is dictated by a set of laws that were set up by God. These are irrevocable laws, and God has provided us with the Quran as an instruction manual on how to navigate this world. So we know, it's not like we're floating around just trying to figure out how do we redeem ourselves. We know, we're told what to do to redeem ourselves. And in fact, we have, these are just a couple of examples. I sort of think about it like, sort of tying it back to like a simulation. It's like a video game, right? You have these actions that you can perform in this world with these prescribed outcomes. So you have ways of earning credit. You do your salat, you give your zakat. Night of Destiny is like 1,000 nights. You can do your Friday prayer. The one I kind of like a lot is like, if you save a life, it's like saving all of the lives. I mean, imagine the amount of credit that you can get by doing that. So then there's obviously like a bunch of soul shrinking things you can do as well, or consequences that kind of take the credit away. And I think of like going through every day, every year, every action that you perform is sort of like there's a chart that you go throughout the day. Are you sort of increasing your credit or decreasing your credit? And where are you at the beginning of the day, and where do you end up at the end of the day? And start measuring that to understand, like, am I doing what God wants, and am I earning the credit that will ultimately grow my soul? And are there any computer engineers or software engineers in here right now? All right, this is for you guys. Everyone else can zone out for a second. I was up at 2 in the morning. I couldn't sleep. So I created a little function here. This is so stupid. But if I commit a sin, my sin counter goes up. And now it's asking, did I repent? Okay, yes, you're repenting. How many sins have you committed? A lot or a little? And are you near death? Yeah, okay, you're not near death. You haven't committed very many sins. We'll forgive you, and your soul will grow a little bit. But if none of those things are true, nothing will happen, okay? So you're not going to get forgiven. Anyway, so, I mean, this was my stupid little attempt to write a function. I haven't coded in like 15 years, so forgive me for the syntax. Anyway, what does it say is like, I don't know why, but this reminds, because I used to be a computer programmer, it reminds me of, how everything is programmed, the laws, the system, God's system is almost like a computer program where if I do something, it will result in something which is God's promise. And if I don't do something, I will receive a consequence. It's very logical, right? And that's kind of what a computer program is. All right, so let's move on a little bit here. So Elon Musk, he's kind of one of these guys who believes in the simulation theory, but he said, if I had one question to ask, I would ask, what's outside of the simulation? I would want to know what's outside of this thing that we live in. And to me, that sort of infers, what is the purpose of it? And I think that's where we start to diverge a little bit. So the simulation theorists believe they don't know what the purpose is, right? They have some theories, which is maybe the simulation is used for scientific research or historical recreation. Maybe it's just entertainment. Maybe it's a video game, who knows? Or social experiments. But I think there's a quote I really like from this guy named John Lennox, who I didn't know about before, but he's a mathematician and I guess a pretty well-known Christian. And he said, when he was asked, what's the purpose of this world or this life? And he said this quote, I'm going to read it verbatim here. Even a Nobel Prize winner, by analyzing a cake, cannot tell you why it was made. But your grandma, who baked the cake, can tell you. So we can analyze the universe magnificently, but ultimately, if it has a creator, which I believe it does, only he can tell us what it is all about. And he has done so in the powerful narrative of the Bible. He's a Christian, so obviously. So while this guy is saying, like, he's a mathematician, he's like a very scientific and mathematical base, but he's saying, I don't know. I can't explain to you why this world exists. Only God can. And of course, in the Quran, we have a lot of information about why we are in this world. Why are we here? It's to denounce the mistake we made in the high society about siding or not being on the fence of whether to side with God or Satan. And we know that only those who attain total certainty about God's absolute authority are going to be redeemed. And one other thing that it's worth mentioning here is that the simulation, like you can imagine sort of like a video game, again, or like a program that you're running, you can sort of, as the programmer, you can see everything, right? You can kind of go back and look at how things work. We have that as well. God says that there's going to be a profound record, and that record is going to have the fate of every human being, and anything that happens on earth to you has already been recorded. So we're not going to be able to escape. Like anything you do in this simulation is recorded and available for you on the day of judgment to see. And some might ask, so then what? So what? Like, why do anything? Like, everything is already predetermined. And as we know, this sort of idea of predestination is a fact as far as God is concerned, but not as far as we are concerned. So we still need to do all of the commandments that God has told us to do. All right. So, is the simulation testable? Can we know if we're in a simulation? Can we know if this is an illusion? And so I'm going to talk about how like the simulation theorists think about this. It's the craziest thing. So they said, well, obviously we'll know if like this giant window pops up and says, hey, you're living in a computer simulation. You want to learn more? And you click the button. So if like a computer window pops up like right in front of your field of view, you'll know, uh-oh, I'm in a simulation. But I mean, that sounds crazy, but it's not really as crazy as it might sound, because we kind of have proof of that, and I'll get into that. But one other thing, this is going to take a little bit of a tangent, but I got into like a YouTube rabbit hole with this the other day. Does anyone know about the double slit experiment? A few people. So this is one of the ways that simulation theorists kind of, and quantum, it has to do with quantum mechanics, how they think that this simulation is created. I don't want to go into too much detail. It's way above my pay grade here. But essentially what this is saying is any light or matter that's fired through, or that's that's moving around us acts as a wave. So it's a probability of where this thing is in space, which is weird in itself to think of. But all of a sudden, that changes anytime you observe that matter or light. So the moment you look at something, it goes from being a wave to a particle. And it's called the wave-particle duality. So it's like that saying of, if a tree falls in the forest and no one is there to hear it or see it, does it make a sound? This is sort of theorizing that actually maybe it doesn't even exist. Like the tree doesn't exist until you're there to observe it. It doesn't actually exist. It's kind of weird, and that's part of what they think the simulation is. Anyway, I wanted to bring it up because it's just interesting, and try to YouTube it. You'll be on there for hours. It's crazy. Anyway, so, but what we know is like this world is an illusion, but it's here for a purpose. And the purpose we are given through the Quran. So in 25:1, it says, the most blessed is the one who revealed the statute book to his servants, and we did not leave anything out of this book. So what we have is a book of law in the Quran, and we're able to, the way that we sort of test this simulation or this illusion is we see the results of God's promises depending on what we do. When we pray, do they get answered? When we do something to step outside of God's kingdom, do we get a consequence? Do we see our own personal miracles? Do we receive provisions, like Ali's speech? So all of these things are God's promise. So in order to test, is this real, or is God's promise real? You just do the things that God says, and you will receive his promise based on sort of what actions you take. And I think the ultimate sort of hack, quote unquote, is that we can attain happiness now and forever. So in 1697, it says, anyone who works righteousness, male or female, while believing, we will surely grant them a happy life in this world. And 22:15 says, if you sever everything that is in this world, dependence from anything else, this plan will eliminate anything that bothers him. So we're able to take advantage of this simulation. While simulation theorists don't think, like it's just random, you can't do anything to control it, this is saying, no, you can. The actions you perform in this world will pay dividends, and you'll be able to achieve perfect happiness now. All right, so I know I'm out of time here, but just to wrap it up, we're going to reflect. Okay, so why did I put you through all this? Because it serves as a reminder to me that everyone and everything that is here with us is a test for us. I think, Ali, you said it yesterday. God treats us like you're the only person in the universe. So everything around you, all of you guys, everything, my children, my family, it's all a test for me. And I also wanted to bring this up because ultimately I think the argument for simulation is an argument for intelligent design. And it's an intelligent design argument coming from atheists typically. So, and just a couple more slides here. So I wanted to put together like a little table here. Before the simulation hypothesis exists, most of these folks, like naturalists and atheists, thought, well, life is real, there's no creator, it's not recorded, there's no purpose, we're just sort of floating around. After the simulation hypothesis, at least for those who have sort of grabbed onto it a little bit, all of a sudden they think, well, maybe life is not real, this is an illusion. Maybe there's a creator, although they don't really prescribe to which creator it is. We're recorded and there's a purpose to it, although we don't know what the purpose is. So it's starting to like inch towards what the reality is, which I found a couple of quotes. The first one was this guy who was I'll call him a former atheist. He said, the simulation argument is perhaps the first interesting argument for the existence of the creator in 2,000 years. It's essentially saying somebody who doesn't believe in God is all of a sudden contemplating it. And I like this tweet where it says, atheists are like, we probably live in a computer civilization. Hey, bro, you just believe in God, except you think he's a nerd, Like you think he's designed a computer program. So I think the novelty in recent years that this, like the philosophers, physicists, and others that are thinking about the simulation, to me, is an eye-opening for me, but also them. the idea that we live in a simulation is Quranic, or it's an illusion. The aspects of it, I think, that are that there's a creator, that there's a purpose to it, are the things that are not being grasped by the folks who have sort of theorized this. But I believe that the more that people become aware that the reality is an illusion, eventually all roads lead to God as the creator and the Quran as the book of law on how to successfully live within it and be redeemed from it. And that's it. Thank you.
Wow, amazing. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Yeah? Amazing, Nathan. I mean, I feel like I'm a little bit smarter after listening to your speech. We have 5 minutes, so we'll take 2 questions. Eunice, I mean, no, it's okay. I'm just kidding. And you.
The man behind the Mac computer has a question.
All right. Nathan.
Salam.
Sam, thank you for the speech. That was awesome. I think it's a great topic, and just goes to show you. I don't know. I just found this funny, that the repeating theme of like having people who don't believe in God suddenly come up with a theory to believe in a creator.
Yeah.
I was going to ask you, have you heard of what do you think about quantum superpositions? I'm just totally kidding. Totally kidding.
Yeah. That's my next speech.
No, but the actual question is, there was an interesting part of this where I think it was Neil deGrasse Tyson, and it was on one of these podcasts. He was doing an interview, and I wanted to know if you like heard about this or what you think about it. Where he basically said, he basically freaked out about this, and then eventually came to the conclusion that he literally said there's a 50% chance we're in a simulation. Have you heard this?
I heard that. I didn't listen to the whole podcast, but yeah, I remember hearing that. And for somebody like him, again, to say that is unbelievable. And I think I was talking to Hossein about this yesterday. I was trying to what am I even concluding here? And he kind of said, because this is a topic I wanted to talk about, but what am I concluding? And it was things like that where it's we're all born with the intuition that God exists, and it kind of manifests itself in different ways. And for like hardcore atheists, I never saw a way for them to make that leap, right? Like we hear about people converting from other religions because you go from like believing Jesus is God to believing God is God. I can make that leap. You've already sort of believed that there's a creator. But to believe nothing and then to believe in God, there's a powerful argument to be made that the simulation theory has something to it that unlocks that in people's brains, like Neil deGrasse Tyson or whoever, So it's very interesting. Any other?
Thank you for your speech.
Of course. Yeah,
Here we go. Thank you so much. I really enjoyed it. It was great.
Mashallah.
So, since you were declared the golf champion, I wanted to ask a golf question.
Yeah, please.
So for me, when I'm on the golf course, it's sort of a different dimension. 4.5 hour average round of golf.
Yes.
And if on average we're awake for 16 hours during the day, 4.5 of it on the golf course, and you kind of lose track of time.
Yeah.
Like you're in a different world.
Yeah.
For lack of a better word, an escape from reality.
Sure.
So we know we're supposed to remember God most of the day. So can you give some tips when you're on the golf course of how to remember God during that time?
Honestly, playing golf is, it's going to sound weird to say, but it's the time I remember God the most because mashallah, where we live, we have a lot of beautiful golf courses as well. And so I'm constantly admiring God's creation around me. The hardest part is when you hit a bad shot and you really, but I find myself now recently, I play with Shariar a lot, so we sort of use it, we do this with each other, kind of encourage each other. But every time I hit a bad shot, I kind of look up and then start praising God, and I do zerk in my head from one hole to the next. So I've actually turned it into the time I praise God a lot on the golf course, because also, by the way, like if I play golf on like a Tuesday, I mean, how blessed am I to be able to do something like that, right? Like to have the ability to go do something I love in nature and inshallah play well. If not, whatever, I still was able to do it. So just praise God on the good shots, but very much on the bad shots too. That's my advice. Yes,
Mashallah, thank you. Nathan, that was a great speech.
Thank you.
So, well, yeah, I do the same thing when I play tennis. When I hit a bad shot,
yeah,
I just say don't complain, you know, and I seek refuge. So
I love that.
It's mashallah. It's like sport is like almost all of it is praising God.
Yes.
Now, how would you embed certainty when it gets to a point where you reach certainty in terms of this simulation theory? You know, what would you say would happen when you come to certainty in terms of what God talks about?
Yeah, I mean, I think the way that I looked at it is, well, first of all, you are completely aware that this world is an illusion. Like there's no, you don't act as if anything in this world matters except God. So that's sort of number one to me. The other thing, I mean, the way that I kind of looked at it, this may not be the most thorough answer, but I look at this, the guarantee of happiness now and forever. If once I've sort of reached that certainty and I have, I'm completely aware that this is all an illusion and there's only one thing that matters, and it's God. I will, and I do all the things that God wants me to do in this world. I will attain happiness. And to me, that's the test in my head of, am I looking around and do I have perfect happiness? Do I have perfect health and wealth? If I have, then in my head, I've sort of reached the level of, I'm completely aware that this is an illusion. I don't have any question. I don't have any doubt. I don't have a hesitation. Because I would not be able to obtain this if I did. Nothing bothers you. Yeah, you have a perfect life in this world. And because otherwise, if something bothered you or something you had a doubt, you couldn't obtain this, right? So you wouldn't have this. And so in my head, I go like, that's the test. Do I have perfect health? Do I have perfect wealth and happiness? If I don't, then something is wrong. Like I have something I need to get rid of or a doubt I need to work on. Yeah.
Thank you
That's it.
so
Thank
much, Nathan. Okay, so little announcement. For all of brothers and sisters living today, we need to check out at 11. So all your luggages need to be out of your room by 11. If you need help, you can ask the desk to keep your luggages, or you can bring them in the back of the conference room. But it has to be out of your rooms by 11 if you want to avoid extra charges. Thank you.
All right, no one wants those extra charges, so go pick up your luggage and come back. But you can ask for an extension if you want, if you got that cash. So yeah. No, you have to pay me. It's not free. You have to pay me. So, no, it's free. Okay, it's free till 12, mashallah. But you have to ask. Okay, fantastic. All right, so that was incredible, mashallah. I felt like I was in a simulation listening to that. So great job, Nathan. And I'm really excited because there's lots of great things I can say about this next speaker. Nusha, she is a really smart, intelligent lady. I love when she comes onto our studies. She's also a fantastic photographer. Check her out on Instagram if you're not already following her. And she has the most infectious laugh, mashallah. So I can't wait to hear her speech. So everyone, give Nusha a round of applause.
Assalamu alaikum. I have to open my laptop. Inshallah. Who said my name back there? Salah. All right, in the wise words of Maximus, salam, 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 halashoma. Okay. The clicker. Assalamu alaikum, guys. So the 20 minutes, wow, mashallah. The speech today is about war, as you can see. So Irene and Eileen are going to come on stage and they're going to demonstrate a battle scene to get us in the mindset. Yeah? No? Okay. Okay, just kidding. I changed the topic because Eileen made too much fun of me about talking about war, something I know nothing about. So let's see. This spoke more to me. Purification, inshallah. Okay. So what inspired this speech is I noticed a pattern in my life. I noticed that I kept getting placed in similar situations over and over again, even when I did not want to, believe me. If you have a weakness and you get placed in a similar situation, it's usually a sign that you are getting purified. God is purifying you. And this is what I really noticed in my life. And there's a lovely photo of Omid on the right, if you can tell. He's on top of a mountain. What is that, Arizona? I wasn't on this particular hike, but if you are friends with Omid, you get high. You get really high. And by that, I mean elevation, okay? But unfortunately, not the soul. Unfortunately, I used to have a really big fear of heights. And God knows you better than you know yourself. And I'm telling you, no matter what I would try to do to avoid heights, such as not go on roller coasters, such as ask Omid, what hike are we going on? Where are we going? No matter what, listen, it's not Omid in control. God is in control, right? So I kept getting into these high elevations on our trips or on our hikes. And one time my head was buried in Hannah's lap on the drive up the cliff. But I realized that this is not right. A submitter would never bury their head in fear in someone's lap. I mean, this is horrible, right? Do I believe God is protecting me? Do I believe God is in full control? But again, it's not a coincidence. And even one time, this is so funny. Wamid and I were on like a trip in Northern California. You know, we had a nice dinner and we're like, all right, we're just gonna drive back to the hotel. But I look on the maps and I'm like, oh, there's this shorter road. Maybe we should take this one so we can, you know, get home and sleep. God is running everything because this was a pitch black road up a mountain, very narrow, 2-lane road. We couldn't even see. We're like, are we falling off the cliff? What's happening? It was really intense. But again, it's not a coincidence. Nothing is a coincidence. If you have a weakness, God will bring it out. God will show it to you and give you opportunities to work on it because he loves us, right? And we don't know, you don't know what's in you. You don't really know the extent of your weakness. You don't really know exactly what weaknesses you have. But in chapter 50, verse 16 says, we created the human and we know what he whispers to himself. We are closer to him than his jugular vein. So God created you. He knows you better than yourself. And because of that, he's the master purifier. And it's a beautiful process. If you submit cheerfully to God, it will, get easier. And so there's this famous saying, this famous quote in the world. Everyone always says, oh, people don't change, right? Like, if somebody's stubborn, they're always stubborn. If somebody, has a temper problem, they always have a temper problem. Once a cheater, always a cheater, things like that, right? But this statement's actually not true. Because the believers, they do change, right? It's not true. And why do the believers change? Because God loves you and he purifies you and he puts us in situations to purify ourselves. And also because this last point here, nobody works as hard as the believers do. We love God so much that we devote our lives to doing what he says and pleasing him. So yeah, of course we work hard in school, at our jobs, but in submission, when it comes to our souls, the believers work very hard. People out there, yeah, I got a temper problem. That's just how I am. Oh, yeah, sometimes I cry, maybe every night with a bottle of wine, whatever, right? That's just how they are, They don't care. They don't want to necessarily, they don't have that motivation to change. But again, this statement is not true. Remember this. You can change. Just because you have a certain weakness, that doesn't mean you're always going to be like that. God will purify you. Oh, I'm like pointing there. And another thing, again, I'm not, talking about everything about purification, just a couple of things that really stood out to me recently. One thing is that we have to realize that consequences are a part of the purification process, right? Because if you don't get a consequence, for example, how else do you know you have a weakness? How else do you know that you're doing something wrong? This is part of the purification process. You commit a transgression, you sin, either you don't realize it, or maybe, unfortunately, you're like, yeah, I'm going to lie here or whatever. Then you get hit. You get a consequence. These are kind pinches because God loves the believers and he wants us to change and recognize what we're doing wrong. But sometimes, I feel like we don't necessarily talk so much about the consequences we go through or, the mistakes that we make, which is normal, right? At Quran Studies, we share all the amazing things we see in our lives, like what God does for us, all the proofs, but we don't necessarily make a comment and say, oh man, I tripped and fell the other day and scratched my head, and that's normal, right? But what I realized was, at least for me, it kind of gave me a false perception in the sense that if I'm getting like consequences, or maybe like unfortunately like I'm not changing and I get a big one, that I'm doomed, or like I'm a horrible submitter. What's wrong with me? How could I do this? Which again, I'm not trying to say that you don't reflect, and of course you're messing up. You get a consequence, you did something wrong. But we can't go to the extreme of being despondent and despairing, and I noticed that's what I was doing. But this is part of changing. You fall once, you get back up. You fall once, you have to keep going, and believers work hard, and you don't dwell on the consequences. You repent, reform, God is most merciful, right? So again, right, believers never despair. Sometimes it can feel like you keep messing up. I keep getting angry, or man, I keep, getting preoccupied at work, or I keep doing this. You're strict on yourself. You tell yourself, yeah, this is wrong. Are you a believer? You check yourself. But you don't despair. You look at the past mistakes and use that to motivate you to work even harder, right? Because God is giving us a lifelong chance. He's most merciful. And chapter 90, verse 4 says, we created the human being to work hard to redeem himself. This isn't, a casual stroll in the park, right? Change takes hard work. And that's what the believers do. They devote their lives to God, and that's what they work the hardest in. But also, the examples I gave with the heights, whatever your weakness is, and I have many more weaknesses other than that, we have to know that God loves us and he will purify us. Ultimately, God is doing everything. He will bring out your weaknesses. He will show it to you. We don't have to necessarily worry about that. And just ending with the quote on the right, 2076, the gardens of Eden beneath which rivers flow will be their abode forever. Such is the reward for those who purify themselves. Okay, thank you.
Wow, amazing.
Eileen?
All right, good?
No, just
You hear me? Beautiful, Nisha. And sorry, I forgot to talk about your, your worldly,
my backflipping
the backflip, yeah.
setting record.
Yeah. Okay. So she does that. Any questions for Nisha? No questions? Oh, Jamal.
Mashallah, Nusha, what a beautiful message. And it's right towards the end of the conference with one more speech. And that's an important message because a lot of people do fall into despondency if things don't go well, things are not looking good and bleak. And your message about, basically you should never give up hope. What would your suggestion be, or how would you support someone by God's grace, yourself and others around you, who may fall into a little bit of that? Because inevitably when something kind of tragic might happen, human nature is to start questioning, oh my God, what's going on? What would you say to something like that? Thank you.
Yeah, that's, again, I can't emphasize enough. Unfortunately, I think my weakness is falling into more just negatively and really kind of like sometimes despairing that how bad I am, instead of like, oh no, it's no big deal, I'm a good submitter. So I've had a lot of practice with that, and I've consulted with a lot of people. Kiana, mashallah, has given good advice, and I think basically what the devil wants you to do is to forget who God is, the fact that he is most merciful. How many verses say that? How many times a day do we say, in the name of God, most gracious, most merciful? So that has to show us this is an amazing and important quality of God. And so that's number one, realizing that who God is, and also that it's not complicated, it's not emotional and dramatic, it's a perfect system. Repent, you ask God forgiveness, reform. And God forgives you, right? So sometimes the devil maybe wants us to be dramatic. Oh, I'm doing this for so long, or, this and that. No, right? It's, yeah. I hope that maybe can shed light. I'm still working on it, inshallah. No, Bushra had already told me she denied her any requests.
So, Nusha, what's your views on prank phone calls? And I'm just kidding. Same one. Why do you think people struggle with that? Because when you give that formula and you put it up there on the screen, and even when you explain it, it seems so simple. You make the mistake, you recognize the mistake, you repent for it, and you fix it. But for some reason, when it's put into action, a lot of people, and I'll speak for myself as well, we really, really, really struggle. Where do you think that struggle comes from? Denial, the fact that it really is actually a problem? What do you think it is?
Struggle to change?
Yeah, to fix and reform that. Because if you reform it, then you think, okay, on to the next purification.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that what I've noticed in myself is sometimes, I don't know if this makes sense, but maybe you guys can relate. Like I'll work on a weakness, and by God's leave, I'll maybe get rid of it, or I'm doing really good. And then some time passes, and then it gets into like hyperdrive, like next level, the weakness in. So to get down to the nitty gritty, completely get rid of a weakness, I think is not just like easy, right? Like get rid of that weakness that no matter what situation you're in, it's completely removed. And so maybe sometimes that's what we experience, but then that might make us think, oh man, I thought I got rid of this weakness, or oh, I thought I'm good. But to completely get rid of a weakness, I think maybe, unfortunately, it can take time. And we forget. Time passes, and sometimes we forget God and forget that, oh yeah, this is a weakness that I have to be working on. We're not as, what does Omid like to say, vigilant? on our toes. Where's Evan? Is he here? Okay, because Evan had Omid's picture in his sermon, so. Anyways, sorry.
Salam alaikum, Nisha. That was really, really awesome because it really puts it in perspective. These are the steps, right? And it's difficult to do, like Busher said, right? It's difficult, but it's very clear and logical. And, you know, it's interesting. I was thinking at the beginning when you were saying, you know, this just keeps happening to me. I don't want to put myself in that position, right? But it's interesting that God has paired you with Omid and Hannah, right? Because he knows you have that weakness, and you know you have to go there. It's like, why does this keep happening to me? How you know? Why does this keep happening? It's like, because, you know, is it Omid's fault? No, you know, it's like you have put yourself in this position, and God has paired you with the person or people that will give you the opportunity to purify yourself. Right? Yeah. So, but sometimes you want to blame the other people. So how do you get past that, right? Because you're like, you know, you keep doing this to me, right? And you keep blaming the other person, and then you start realizing, is this interesting? I was complaining about something and this perfect stranger I had never met before says something to me, and I was like, why would you say that? You don't even know me. But then I was thinking, God wanted me to hear it because that's exactly my problem. So how do you deal with that? I mean, how do you, you know, what do you do to keep from blaming others and put the blame on yourself? Because it's a purification.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, number one is nothing's a coincidence. Even the people you casually meet on the street or talk to is all planned by God. God is controlling everything. The people in your family, you know, the people in this community, all of that. So just remembering that God is running everything and he's controlling everything that happens to you. And I think also just really reflecting and examining yourself, right? As I said, like, if you're noticing a pattern, like, you know, for example, every time I'm going to work, the copy machine breaks or something. I don't know, this doesn't happen to me, right? But let's say it keeps happening to you, and every time you get angry, well, that copy machine breaking is showing you have that weakness, right? I can't blame the copy machine. I think just basically like really examining ourselves and being critical and aware of what I'm doing wrong, what is my weakness, because it could also be like, yeah, that person, maybe they are transgressing, right? When Omid takes me near the edge of the cliff just to make me cry. No, I'm just kidding. Right? But yeah, so just making sure that you kill your ego and point the finger at yourself, as we like to say, inshallah. Yeah. Yeah.
Great. One more. Mrs. President.
Oh.
One more question.
Oh, I don't have my ear bandage. I'm sorry. I left it upstairs.
Great job, Nisha. That was wonderful. MashaAllah. Question for you. What advice do you have to someone who feels stuck and they can't change? You know, sometimes you can be in like a rut. Like, what advice do you have for that?
Okay. I know this may sound harsh, but this is what I tell myself. Sometimes we're really dramatic, including, like, I'm really dramatic. And it's not. I just tell my, you know, thank my husband, Wamid, he tells me all the time. like, put the emotions aside, you know? I tell myself that because I feel like that sometimes, especially if I get a huge consequence. I'm like, oh man, like I feel stuck, kind of. God forgive me. And I tell myself basically, don't be dramatic. It's a system. Repent, like God is showing you what you're doing wrong. That's the first steps, right? It's not that you're stuck. You're at that kind of first level. Like Nathan was saying, like video game, right? Just go to the next level, keep going. And again, I think it's just like emotions and being dramatic and telling yourselves like, take it easier, take it a little easier. Okay, thank you so much.
Mashallah, give her a round of applause. Well done, Nisha. That was fantastic. Okay, so praise God. We have Hannah next. And Hannah is a keen traveler, loves hiking. And oh, yeah, she's got a baby called Audrey as well, if you haven't already seen her. So, yeah, Hannah, come on up.
I didn't realize you were this much taller than me, Nusha. Okay. Salam alaikum, everyone. The last speech, you guys did it. You made it. Mashallah. Thank you to all the organizers. This has been just an amazing weekend of soul growth. I feel very blessed to be here and to have experienced this with all of you, to see my real family, and so, mashallah. Okay, so this is actually part 2 of Nusha's speech of how God uses Omid to purify us. I'm somewhat joking, but not exactly. You'll see. So I'll start with a verse. I love you. 96:11. Is it not better for him to follow the guidance? And yes, it is. It is much better to follow the guidance from God. And I'll go ahead and get into why I wanted to talk about guidance. So, clicker. Where do I point? This way? There we go. Okay. All right. So just going to go through quickly. The first part will be the epiphany that I experienced through Omid's love of off-roading. The second, we'll be talking about how guidance, trust, and submission are the perfect combo. Then we'll get into types of guidance and how it actually merges into one. And inshallah, achieving guidance throughout our lives and how God is the most merciful. All right. Epiphany. So I'm just going to give you just a brief background. We were in Hawaii, and Omid has, mashallah, a very adventurous spirit. And I mean, as my dad had commented, like, God knows, right, that he pairs you with someone who brings out the good and also helps you get purified. And so this is just every trip that we go on, Omid finds one thing, one activity to do that pushes me to the limit and forces me to examine myself and reflect. Majority of the trip is and most of the time, actually, I end up really enjoying the experience, and I learn something about myself, and I feel like I've grown as a submitter. So that's, mashallah, that's great. I don't want to blame Omid. I actually appreciate it. And this is actually an experience that taught me a lot about myself. So this is an off-road trail in Hawaii that takes you to one of like 3 green sand beaches in the world. And so we're like, yeah, that sounds incredible. Let's go check it out. And Omid had done research, and I didn't really know exactly what to expect. I mean, I'm not a huge off-road person, but I was like, okay, like it can't be that bad. Like we've done it before. So we show up, and I'm like, excited. I'm like, all right, what's gonna happen? And then this is what I see. Okay, so I'm gonna go to the next slide, and I'll kind of keep going back and forth, but just keep this visual in your mind as I talk about the experience. Okay. So these are the series of events with my emotions. Before, as I said, I was excited. Yet, because, again, I have gone through this many times with my dear husband, I was weary. I was hopeful that, oh, okay, new experience, but I was a little apprehensive, like, off-roading, not my thing. Hopefully it'll be okay. I was terrified, okay? And as you can see in that photo, there are many, many different routes in this trail. It's just a huge open space. Any off-roading that Omid and I have ever done, it's very clear where you're supposed to go. which path you're supposed to take. You don't have to question it. You don't have to make decisions. You're just like, okay, I'm going. And you go slow and it's okay. This time, there was like 15 different options you could make, right? And it wasn't just like you choose one path and then you stick to it. It's like you go down one path and then you come up and then you have another fork of like 4 different paths. So just imagine you're going through this and you're like, which way do I go next? Is that one going to have a big drop? Some of these, turns that we were taking, I couldn't even see the bottom of the road. I'm like, what's going to happen? Like, how are we going to get past this? How do we know where to go? And of course, I will say that before we went on started the trail, we did an al-Fatiha. We asked God for everything to go smoothly. But as Nusha mentioned, we have to go through things to be purified, to identify weaknesses in ourselves. And so we were meant to go through this, and maybe it was because I still had a lack of trust in God, or there was, something that needed to come out. But anyways, I was terrified the whole way. I was, we were dropping. At one point, it really did feel like our car was going to turn on its side. I'm holding Audrey in the back of the car, and I'm just like, just reciting al-Fatiha. She's picking up on my vibe, obviously, and I'm freaking out. So she's crying. She's like, what's going on? I'm like, Bismillah. Anyway, so clearly terrified. Then thank God, 3 miles of slow, painful off-roading, we get to our destination of the green sand beach. And I'm just thankful to be alive and to experience something new, mashallah. And it really was beautiful, and it was worth it. And Omid and I were kind of like reflecting and talking about it. And so we spend our time at the beach. We gotta go back the same way we came. There's no other way. So we're like, okay, let's really do al-Fatiha. Inshallah, God will guide us on the right path, right? And as we're getting into the car, and we see that there's locals that actually take tourists on the back of truck beds. They drive them because it's 3 miles, so people don't really want to walk that. For money, of course, they have to pay. But we see this guy, he's about to take off with a bunch of people back to the front. And Omid's like, we're going to follow him. Let's go. So we're following this guy, and the whole way, it was black and white. I mean, this guy, of course, he's doing this for a living in some sense. He knows what he's doing. He knows every single path at every fork, which one's the smoothest, which one doesn't have a drop, and the entire way I'm just like, wow, thank you, God. This is very pleasant. I feel very safe. I feel very happy. Everything's going smoothly. And mashallah, we made it back. But I did learn that I lack total trust in God through that experience. Because did I really believe that our car was going to flip over? Did I think that? Did I really think that, God would allow something so tragic and horrible to happen to us and our family of believers? No. And unfortunately, I was not 100% believing that. And I learned that guidance takes full submission to God alone, and trust, that takes trust, steadfastness, and a strong belief. So this is the epiphany that I had. Okay, the off-road trail is a metaphor for life. So again, think of that photo. In our lives, there are so many different paths. And we don't know what lies ahead. We don't know what we're going to be doing tomorrow exactly, what our life is going to be like. One day it's just you and Omid. The next day you're pregnant and you're like, wow, we're going to have a baby. And you're just like, wow, subhanAllah, this is what God has planned for us, right? And you just have to trust in God. And this is, the concept of we don't do choosing, right? There's so many paths, but God is the one that does the choosing, and God is the one that guides you. And with God, so I was going to say that even though there's many paths, there's actually only 2 paths in this life. It's You're either with God, you're following God, or you're following Satan, right? And with God, you have peace and stability, you have understanding and happiness. Like, you know what your life, the meaning of your life is, your purpose, and what you're supposed to be doing. And when you have total trust in God, He leads you back to Him. And in this life, you actually receive the rewards, and inshallah, in the hereafter, you get to go back to your Creator. And when I realized, I was like, this is how I felt with the guide. When I was going back, when we were leaving the beach, I felt so good following that guide. I was like, okay, he knows what he's doing, and I'm going to be totally fine. I'm going to be, safe. And why aren't we like this in our lives? If we truly believe in God and His qualities, right, that He knows everything, that He is doing everything, that He controls every single thing in our lives, why do we ever have fear or anxiety or worry? We should have complete and total trust in God and just be peaceful and happy and know that maybe something doesn't turn out the way we thought it would. It's best for you. It's actually a good thing. And if something seems hard, as Nisha was mentioning, it's purification. It's good for you. You need to go through that. You need to fix yourself. Why? What's our end goal? To get back to God, right? This life, the purpose of this life, it's not the vanity and the games and the playing and the money and the children. It's not that. This life is our opportunity to get back to God. So these things, they push us to strengthening our soul, to being better, right? How's the one? 47:17. As for those who are guided, He augments their guidance and grants them their righteousness. So this is a blessing from God, that when you choose God, He guides you and He grants you righteousness. And of course, without God, you're blind. And that's how I felt without the guide. I felt so lost and fearful and anxious. I had no idea what was going to happen. I didn't know if we were going to fall, flip, what the heck was going on. And, there was no guide in the worldly sense, right? And it was very, anxiety inducing. 1772, as for those who are blind in this life, they will be blind in the hereafter, even a lot worse. So, of course, we need to open our eyes. We need to see the unseen. And we need to accept that God is in full control and trust in Him and understand the purpose of this life. Otherwise, we won't be able to prostrate on the day of resurrection. We won't be able to be close to God. Okay, moving forward. Guidance, trust, and submission. The perfect combo. 1188, he said, "O my people, what if I have solid proof from my Lord? What if He has provided me with a great blessing? It is not my wish to commit what I enjoin you from. I only wish to correct as many wrongs as I can. My guidance depends totally on God. I have put my trust in Him, and to Him I have totally submitted," right? So it's like a triangle, If we trust God, He will guide us in the right path. When God guides us, we have to fully trust His plan, right? And we achieve this through total submission to God alone. So it just works together. When you fully submit to God and you trust in Him, He will lead you down the perfect path. And sometimes there are things that happen down that perfect path and, that we have to learn from. We have to go through admission tests. We have to be purified. And sometimes we won't like it, but it's what's best for us. So we have to accept that, and we have to trust that obviously God knows what He's doing. We don't know what we're doing. There's the verse that talks about if, we were in charge, there would just be chaos on earth. I mean, I feel that in my day-to-day life. Like, I have no control over Audrey, okay? And I know that if I am a bad submitter, it's chaos, okay? It's just not good, and I cannot control her. But if I have God on my mind and I know that He is controlling everything, mashallah, she's a great child always, but it's just perfect. Everything is smooth. There is no chaos. And that's what it is. It's a small example, but in the grand scheme of things, this is the experience. Perfection when you are with God, right? Happiness now and forever. Surah 22, verse 15. If anyone thinks that God cannot support him in cannot support him in this life and in the hereafter, let him turn completely to his Creator in heaven and sever his dependence on anyone else. He will then see that this plan eliminates anything that bothers him. We have thus revealed clear revelations herein that then God guides whoever wills to be guided. So this is, again, that concept of severing your dependence, full trust in God, total submission. God will guide you, right? He has given you the revelations. He has given you the information, the knowledge. You know, he has been so merciful to us that not only do we have the Quran, but we have explanations from the messenger of the covenant. We have clarifications. And this is, mashallah, such a blessing. Let's use that and be grateful. So, of course, when we sever all dependencies, the path to God is perfectly smooth. The difficult part is the purification, conquering our weaknesses. We have to have a mental shift. When we're going through these things, we have to, again, be grateful and appreciative and think about God. And what does God want me to do in this situation? When I'm in the car and things are going, you know, on the off-road trail, am I supposed to be freaking out? Am I supposed to be feeling terrified? No, I'm supposed to be thinking, God is running everything. We're going to be fine. God, guide us on the right path. Please help us to be safe and make it to our destination and not have fear. I can say that. I was saying that. I was doing al-Fatiha, but was I feeling it? No, I wasn't. I was feeling very scared. And so you have to believe it. You have to have that mental shift and have complete trust in God at every turn. That means no fear, worry, or anxiety for what lies ahead. And we have to believe wholeheartedly that God will guide us back to him. 2689, only those who come to God with their whole heart will be saved. That's not just a little bit of your heart, half your heart, 99% of your heart. It's your whole heart. Types of guidance. So, mashallah, of course, we have the religious guidance. I talked about how, you know, we have the Quran, we have the revelations, the explanations, mashallah, just an abundance of information and everything that we need. Quran fully detailed, 752. We have given them a scripture that is fully detailed with knowledge, guidance, and mercy for the people who believe. This is all we need. The Quran, and of course we have the explanations, but it all goes back to the ultimate source, right? The Quran. And we have the messenger, 933, that's why I have that, mashallah. And I'll just read 39:23 because this is, again, the paths, right? I just think about that. God has revealed herein the best hadith, a book that is consistent and points out both ways to heaven and hell. The skins of those who reverence their Lord cringe therefrom, then their skins and their hearts soften up for God's message. Such is God's guidance. He bestows it upon whomever he wills. As for those sent astray by God, nothing can guide them. So again, these are the paths. Which path are we going to take? Are we going to stick with God? Are we going to trust him and believe that where he's guiding us is the perfect path? Or are we going to veer off, you know, take another fork and think, oh, I know better. You know, astaghfirullah, you follow Satan. You know, you fall into weakness. You break a commandment. And you're going to pay for it. You're going to almost flip your car over. You're going to, you know, this is what we have to remember. This is why that visualization experience was so strong for me, because I really felt like, you know, the path was so clear to me. And then, again, this was like the types of guidance. So there's the religious guidance, and then there's the guidance in life. And in life, you know, maybe if you're in your 20s to 30s, these are a lot of the thoughts that you're having, right? Like, which university should I go to? What should I study? What job do I want? Who should I marry? How many kids should I have? Where should we live? You know, all these kinds of thoughts, right? And the list is infinite. And we might feel overwhelmed by all of these decisions that we have to make. But the truth is, and this is the thing, right? All those paths, thinking about that image, the fact of the matter is that if you trust God and you choose him and you are a submitter and you follow his commandments, you don't have to worry about a single thing. Not one single thing. None of these decisions, you don't have to worry. God is going to guide you and push you, and you're going to follow him on the right path. So the conclusion I came to is they are one and the same. The religious guidance that God has bestowed upon us is the best guidance in life that we could ask for. The guidance that God has given us, we, use that in our day-to-day to make our decisions. And actually, in our day-to-day lives, or even the big decisions that in our life we have to make, God is the one that is choosing. We've heard so many stories about people, maybe wanting to go down this road for work or for a job or for a wife or husband, and that's not the way it's supposed to be. And God redirects, and it gives them something so much better, something way better than you could ever have thought. And why? Because they fully submitted to God alone, and they stuck with God, and they trusted him, and he guided them, right? So again, these two, the religious guidance, the life guidance, it's one and the same. It's the same thing. This life, God will provide for you. God will give you perfect happiness, wealth, peace, all of these aspects, if you just submit totally to him in your life, and you worship God alone. And that kind of brings me into how do we achieve the guidance? Well, you just do it, as Shia LaBeouf said. 1976, God augments the guidance of those who choose to be guided. For the good deeds are eternally rewarded by your Lord and bring far better returns. So we must choose God. That's it. You choose God, and God will guide you through the rest. In your submission, when we have discussions about different interpretations of an understanding, and how do we know what's correct? God will tell you. You have to wait. You have to be patient. You debate in the best possible manner. Just like how it is in our Quranic discussions, it's the same in your life. You be patient. You wait. You trust in God. God will show you where you're supposed to go. Don't have fear. Don't have worry or anxiety for what's next, because you know that he knows, and he's guiding you. So why would you have fear? Why would you worry? These verses just kind of confirm the idea of when you choose God, God guides you. So we have a roadmap. I mean, God has, again, this goes with all the revelations, the information that God has bestowed upon us. We have a roadmap. And so I just want to read these two verses, 24, 36, and 37. God's guidance is found in houses exalted by God, for his name is commemorated therein, glorifying him therein day and night. It says, those who frequent the masjid. People who are not distracted by business or trade from commemorating God, they observe the contact prayers, salat, and give the obligatory charities, zakat, and they are conscious of the day when the minds and the eyes will be horrified. So God tells us what we need to do. And these are the things that we have to complete. We have to worship God alone. We do the contact prayers. We give zakat. We are conscious of God. We commemorate God day and night. We worship him alone. No idol worship. This is what we do to achieve eternal guidance. Inshallah. 2:38. We said, go down there from all of you. When guidance comes to you from me, those who follow my guidance will have no fear, nor will they grieve. This is God's promise. No fear, no grief. If you continue to choose God and you follow his path, this is the promise that you receive. Okay. Thank you.
Mashallah, thank you so much, Hannah. That was incredible. And we've got the first question. She raised a virtual hand because she sent a text first. And obviously, it's the mother. Go for it.
Thank you. Mashallah. Salaam alaikum, everyone. Great job, Hannah. Praise God. When I was listening, it made me think of how important it is for us to have a guiding teacher, okay? Because at the end, the destination was the same. But someone can go through life without a guiding teacher getting to the same destination, but they have a lot of turbulence. And there are a lot of trials. Their trials are going to be much harder getting to that destination versus when there's a guiding teacher and you can just follow the guidance that God sends to us through them to get to that destination. And it becomes very smooth. Everything becomes so much easier because they know which pitfalls to avoid, right? So that was really interesting. And it made me think of, sometimes we have to think of spending. It reminded me of this too. spending in the cause of God, like buying Qurans, for instance. Someone will say, oh, I don't need it, whatever, or whatever they could be going in their mind. But spending in the cause of God, it reminded me of this verse of Surah 4, verse 95, where God says, higher ranks for the strivers. Not equal are the sedentary. Not equal are the sedentary among the believers who are not handicapped, and those who strive in the cause of God with their money and their lives. God exalts the strivers with their money and their lives above the sedentary. For both God promises salvation, but God exalts the strivers over the sedentary with a great recompense. So it's almost like if you had spent the money, right, you wouldn't have to go through that. You would get to where you would go, right? And I kind of think of that like for our lives, it's good for us to spend money in the cause of God, because it will, I think that it will, of course, it will give higher rank because we're striving. And coming to, like, spending our time, our money, coming to the conferences, this to me is like following the guidance that was left to us by God as an example through his messenger of the covenant to come here. And spending, it brings us, we strive more. So we're on a faster road to that destination by God's leave. MashaAllah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Salam alaikum. That's amazing. Hanajan, as usual, mashallah, you did a great job. God bless you for sharing. You were talking about wholeheartedly.
Yes.
And we know if our faith is polluted with any idol worshiper, we are not going to make it. Can you elaborate about what do you mean about the wholeheartedly? Because I know it's in Quran says we have to come to God wholehearted. Can you elaborate about that?
Yeah. I think about the sermon that talks about, Rashad talks about why should we love God, right? It's like a rhetorical question. And he explains all of the reasons that we must love God because of the mercy he has shown us. And it really comes down to, I think, the love that you have for God. And the wholeheartedness. Because when you truly love someone or a being, you will do anything that they ask happily, joyfully, and there will be no sense of, oh, I don't want to, or you'll want to strive. You'll want to strive for their love, and so this is how I think of it, that you have to remember that God is so merciful. Why do you love God? Why should you love God? You must love God for everything that he has given you, and come with your whole heart and thank him through the worship practices and reverence him, right, and observe him. So that's what comes to mind. Thank you.
Hannah, great job,
Thank you,
mashallah. So you mentioned the story about the road in Hawaii and what you were going through.
Yeah.
When you're going through situations, for example, that you may believe Omid is putting you through, okay, and there is a level of objection that rises, what have you done to kind of start working on that so that it's not like, because we know that we're in the situation because God willed that situation to happen for us, okay? Yeah. What have you started to maybe do to help yourself, check yourself before you blame somebody else, for example? Because some people, they plan a lot of things and they do a lot of things, and we may react a certain way, but like how have you done this checks and balances for yourself?
So that's a good question, and by God's leave, we've been blessed to travel a lot, and it's interesting when you travel, you kind of feel like you're in control of what you're going to do, right? Because you're planning. You're like, we're going to do this, we're going to do that, and you have this idea. And Omid, mashallah, does a lot of her planning. And I honestly think that we just recently went through something similar in Washington. in like Seattle area. We went to a national park, and we didn't know that there was going to be snow on the hiking trail. So we're going, and we show up, and there is snow, like as if you were just somewhere that snows constantly. Like, it's not melted, it's just snow. And we're like hiking. I'm wearing his jacket, first of all, because I didn't bring one, because I didn't know there was going to be snow. And like I said, this is kind of a pattern that Omid and I have gone through a lot. And as Nusha was talking about, God knows that you need to be put in this situation. And I really think it's experience, because that last time that we went through this, I actually didn't have any objection to Omid. I was like, when we were hiking in the snow, I was thinking like, okay, God is running everything. We were meant to go through this for whatever reason. And it's not, like, Omid didn't plan, that it's not his fault that there's snow. It's not his fault. Like, God is running everything. And it was just a matter of experience to recognize that when we go through something, it is never the other person who's putting us through it. It might seem that way, right? And of course, like, I can't say that in every situation the other person is absolved. Like, they have to take responsibility if they did commit a sin or do something wrong. But our responsibility is to understand that God is in full control. Nobody else is in control. And if you're going through something that you don't like, you need to reflect on yourself. You need to point the finger. So really, I think it's just been a matter of, I've gone through this situation so many times that the pattern, it's now like, it would be really funny if I kept saying, oh, this is Omid, like this Omid's doing this. No. Why do you keep going through this? Because I keep objecting, because I keep showing this weakness, I keep having this problem, and God is so merciful to allow me to continue experiencing these situations so that I get better. So I think it's a matter of time, education, understanding, and just remembering that God is doing everything. And that takes, it's not easy, it's not a switch, right? Like, yeah. Good question.
Assalamu alaikum, Hannah. MashaAllah. So going through this purification every time, knowing you, do you have, you must have a mental plan, because you know Omid and you're gonna go on many, many adventures, right? So when you know the adventure that's coming next, how do you mentally prepare before the actual event, because you're used to it, right? So like, what's your method? And because I think something like that would really benefit you throughout the day, because now you're aware and you have this mental, awareness, and you must have something. So can you tell me like how you,
Yeah, this has actually been a more recent development in my submission journey. This idea of like mentally preparing myself for situations, because a lot of the time I just go into it and I'm like, okay, and my reactions are sometimes not submitter-like, because I haven't taken the time to consider and remember that God is running everything. And so now what I try to do, and obviously the goal is to remember God throughout the entire day and be conscious of God always. And I know that if you are conscious of God, there's no way you're going to object. Because if you know that God is doing everything, then there's no reason to get upset or angry or, worried or whatever, because you know that, okay, this is what's best for me. But unfortunately, I don't think about God all the time. I try my best to think about God majority of the time, but one thing that I've started doing recently is whenever I'm about to do any, like, maybe not everyday things, but let's say I'm going to go out, or we're going to go to dinner, or we're going to, watch a movie or go on a trip. Like, I try to take the time and think, okay, if anything happens that may not go to your idea of what is good, you need to submit cheerfully, because you have to remember God is in full control. And it just takes that, honestly. I have noticed that when I do that, I really am more conscious of God throughout that experience or situation, and it helps me. If there's ever a time where, okay, I didn't want that to happen, it's meant to be. A lot of the time, like with Audrey, now that we travel with her, it's hard to know, like, she doesn't have like a very strict schedule. So sometimes she'll like wake up from a nap and I'm like, I didn't want that to happen. Like, I wanted her to sleep more. And then you just kind of have to say, okay, I'm going to shift my plans. This is what God wanted. And actually, at the end of the day, when I look back, it was perfect. The reason that she woke up early was because we wanted to go do something, and now she's going to go to sleep earlier, which is exactly what was supposed to happen because we're going to wake up early tomorrow. You know, like these things that you don't think of, you have to, every little thing, you know God is in full control. And my outlook is, if something bad has not actually happened, just submit cheerfully. I mean, obviously, even if something bad is happening, you have to submit cheerfully. You have to understand and reflect and point the finger to yourself. But I'm unfortunately someone who has anxiety. And if something is seemingly bad or something may happen that I don't like, I start to like object. And I have to remember that if nothing bad has happened, just it's not actually bad. Everything is perfect. Just submit cheerfully. So yeah, definitely there's like a mental preparation and kind of just going with what I responded to Payam, like God is in full control.
Thank you so much. Hello? Thank you so much, Hannah. All right. This is a sad part because that's the last day that we guys going to spend time together. But I just wanted to take a moment and just show you how appreciative we were spending time with you guys, with our real family. It was a blessing, and let's hope that all the striving is accepted by Allah, rewards, you know, in the hereafter, inshallah. Before I introduce Bahram for the closing remarks, Shireen want to say a couple of words too. Thank you, guys.
Don't worry, it's not my Oscar nomination speech. I just wanted to say that I love you guys. It's been such a blessing, and inshallah, we'll get to all be together soon. And for those of you who are going to New York, send us a little message. All right, love you guys. Salam alaikum. Bahram, where are you?
Okay. Inshallah, all of you had a wonderful time. I certainly had a wonderful time. It's a pleasure to have seen all of you. Let's start with an al-Fatih. Bismillahir-Rahmanir-Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Ar-Rahmanir-Rahim. Maliki Yawmiddin. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. By the grace of God, we had so many great speeches, educational for us, and it's also heartwarming to see our next generation and how, mashallah, they have the correct understanding and share wonderful speeches. Thanks to all the moderators, thanks to the tech team here and everybody else who participated. I'm not going to mention names because I'm going to forget some. Praise be to God. Thank you. If you are coming for lunch, we have brought extra cars so that we can take people with us, and of course we'll bring you back, inshallah. Yeah. Or to the airport if that's where you're going. So do assemble in the back with your luggage ready, inshallah. Right after the Friday prayer, or not the Friday prayers, noon prayer, inshallah, we will leave, head out. It's about a half-hour ride. And half-hour back. 1:30 is the prayer, so right after that we need to leave, inshallah. And we'll have pizza and drinks, inshallah. I saw Rashad holding one of this version of the Bible in the video, and by the grace of God, we were able to find a bunch of them used, and we bought them because I wanted to distribute them to communities in the future. Most of them are soft cover. I picked one of the hardcover ones, which is super clean inside. Whoever had it I don't think, spent much time reading it. This was a version, by grace of God, that was translated from all available information at the time in the 1960s, late 60s. And Rashad held one of these. And if you look at, for example, and so Matthew 7, I forget the verse, maybe it's 12, 21. It talks about none of the people who are basically idol worshipers are going to make it. And most of the other Bibles you look at, they say a different way. Do you know the quote? Go ahead. Yeah, it says not all. So it's a wonderful book to read if we have time. So I want to give this away to a community that doesn't have one of these. You have one? We have another 10. So if you don't, inshallah, I'll give you one. You're coming to lunch. Remind me, please. No, he ran out of battery, I think. They gave me the other one. Some years ago, by the grace of God, we recorded the Jesus Myths and Message book here in a professional studio with a narrator. And if you go to jesusmm.org, so if you're introducing submission to people who are Christian or Jews, and we printed cards, and you can take the cards, give away cards to people. And so that's available. Some years ago, the beginning of Psalm 1 is really beautiful. And this translation, to me, is the most beautiful, easy to read and understand version of the Bible. When Sarah was, I think was 10 years old, I had her read the beginning of Psalm 1 and Psalm 91. I didn't ask her for permission to play it. So I said, I'm not going to do it unless I have a permission from her. The child sound and the enthusiasm she had reading that, I could listen to that every day. Later, when she was older, I had her re-record it. It's more of a, adult type sound, but I cherish the old one. So I recorded a different way with play that, and you see how Quranic it is.
One, true happiness. Happy the man who follows not the counsel of the wicked, nor walks in the way of sinners, nor sits in the company of the insolent, but delights in the law of the Lord and meditates on his law day and night. He is like a tree planted near running water that yields its fruit in due season and whose leaves never fade. Whatever he does prospers. Not so the wicked, not so. They are like chaff which the wind drives away. Therefore in judgment the wicked shall not stand, nor shall sinners in the assembly of the just. For the Lord watches over the way of the just, but the way of the wicked vanishes. Psalm 91. Security under God's protection. You who dwell in the shelter of the Most High, who abide in the shadow of the Almighty, say to the Lord, my refuge and my fortress, my God, in whom I trust. For he will rescue you from the snare of the fowler, from the destroying pestilence. With his pinions he will cover you, and under his wings you shall take refuge. His faithfulness is a buckler and a shield. You shall not fear the terror of the night, nor the arrow that flies by day, not the pestilence that roams in darkness, nor the devastating plague at noon. Though 1,000 fall at your side, 10,000 at your right side, near you it shall not come. Rather with your eyes shall you behold and see the requital of the wicked, because you have the Lord for your refuge. You have made the Most High your stronghold. No evil shall befall you, nor shall affliction come near your tent. For to his angels he has given command about you, that they guard you in all your ways. Upon their hands they shall bear you up, lest you dash your foot against a stone. You shall tread upon the asp and the viper. You shall trample down the lion and the dragon. Because he clings to me, I will deliver him. One will set him on high because he acknowledges my name. He shall call upon me and I will answer him. I will be with him in distress. I will deliver him and glorify him. With length of days I will gratify him and will show him my salvation.
Praise be to God. If you're interested in this recording, I'll be happy to send it or post it. So after this, I think we're going to take another group photo, and everybody get ready for the Friday prayer. I keep saying Friday prayer. For the noon prayer, inshallah, and then those who are coming will head out right away. May God bless all of us with his, go ahead. Oh, yeah. Sorry, I forgot. Next year, we need to decide, really by the end of the year, each time we need to decide where it's going to be in order to get the best preparation done, especially with the hotels. So by a show of hand, who wants it to be somewhere in California? I think it's fine. Hawaii. Who wants Hawaii?
Hawaii! Hawaii! Yeah!
Oh, wow, that's it. Where? Scotland? Oh, we were there last year. Scotland. Only one person.
Bali.
New Mexico is supposed to have a clear, beautiful sky. Texas, New Mexico. Texas, anyone? New Mexico? Okay, it's only two hands. So anyway, looks like either California or Hawaii. So
Hawaii.
let's figure it out, inshallah. So may God bless all of you who made the effort and the expense to come here. I know that it makes, financially, it makes a lot more sense to hold this in California because the majority are there. But at the same time, it's good to come out and see each other and spread it out. And may God bless us with submitters in a lot of the other states, because there are people looking for communities and they don't have it, they're alone. So I see nothing wrong with people spreading out and inshallah building other communities, as long as it's not just one person going. That would not be a good decision to me. But may God bless all of our affairs with his guidance and protection, and have a wonderful day and trip back if you're leaving before you come with us. God bless you.
Guys, I know I've already said goodbye, but I do have one last announcement. The announcement is there's a necklace that's been handed into reception. So it's white and silver or gold or something. So if anyone's lost that, and they don't collect it, then I will take it. So thank you very much. That's my payment. But we're going to do a group picture. Yeah, we're going to do a group picture, inshallah. So we're going to go outside. Yeah, we're going to go outside. So everyone get ready to do the group picture. Also, thank you so much, Virginia, for hosting an amazing conference, mashallah. Thank you. This has been incredible.